What's going on, guys? It's NYPrepper here. In this video, I want to talk to you guys about another overlooked prep, and we're going to talk about a siphon pump. So what you're looking at here is just a basic siphon pump, and this particular siphon pump that I got, it also allows me to use this as an air pump. So I could use this not only to siphon different liquids, but I can also use it to pump up things like air mattresses and, more importantly, vehicle tires. Now, I haven't actually tested this pump to see how it would work against a car tire, but I'm sure it would work in a worst case scenario. But siphon pumps are not something that many preppers think about. Most preppers, they think about the more sexy aspects of prepping, like, ammunition and guns and bug out locations and stockpiling food and bushcrafting and survival, bug out bags, the more interesting and sexy aspects of prepping. But a siphon pump is such a basic tool, and it's really, really important to have one. The number one reason why you want to have one is so you can siphon fuel into your vehicles or into containers after a grid down event. So if there's a grid down situation and there's shortages of fuel like gasoline, diesel fuel, kerosene, heating oil, etc., you're going to need to obtain those fuel resources somehow. And if trucks are not delivering it to gas stations because of, a collapse of society, and there's no more supply chain delivering fuel from refineries to your local gas station, then you're going to have to get that fuel somehow to keep your vehicles running, especially if you have a bug out vehicle. If you need to refuel your bug out vehicle, chances are you're going to have to refuel your vehicle at some point. And if it's a real SHTF situation, collapse of society, grid down situation, EMP, World War III, whatever the scenario is, chances are gas is going to go out of stock very quickly, okay? Most cars on the road in the United States run off of gasoline. So gasoline supplies are going to dry up first, and then after that, diesel supplies will dry up. So if you have a gas car or gas truck or gas vehicle, chances are within a few days of a major SHTF situation, the gas supplies around the country are going to vaporize, no pun intended. Basically, there's not going to be any more gas left at your local gas station or all kinds of gas stations around the country. And so you're going to have to scavenge fuel, and the best way to scavenge fuel is to get it from, abandoned vehicles or other types of areas where there may be some gas stored, and you might be able to salvage or scavenge some gas from. They could be abandoned vehicles that people abandoned on the side of the road. You could use your imagination. Even generators that aren't being used, you can scavenge fuel from generators and underground storage tanks and different things. You can use your imagination, but the biggest thing is that there's going to be a lot of cars that are abandoned on the side of the road. People are going to abandon their vehicles, especially if there's massive traffic jams, which I anticipate on happening after a serious grid down situation or SHTF situation. There's going to be entire highways filled with abandoned cars because the traffic is going to be so bad that people are just going to abandon their vehicles and go out on foot. So you may be able to salvage some gasoline from these abandoned vehicles or other types of vehicles. So that's why a siphon pump is so important, because it allows you to scavenge gasoline or diesel fuel or heating oil or kerosene or other types of fuel, you can go around and scavenge it once the actual supplies diminish and you can't get fuel at gas stations and other places. Now, I know somebody in the comments is probably going to say, oh, you don't need that. You could just get a tube and suck it out with your mouth. Well, yeah, you could do that, but, you know, why possibly poison yourself when you can just buy a siphon for $10 and throw it in your car, throw it in your bug out vehicle. You could even throw it in your bug out kits, you know. And I always recommend that every vehicle has a siphon pump in it. Whether it's a bug out vehicle or not, you should always have a siphon pump in there, because you never know if there's an emergency of some kind and you have to siphon out gas. It's a really good thing to have. And again, this particular siphon pump that I have, you can use it as an air pump as well. So if I start to run low on air on my tires, I can pump them up. And I can also use this to do an oil change as well. I could siphon oil out through the dipstick. I can pull the dipstick out and stick a little tube in there, which I actually have right here. And I could stick this tube through where the dipstick is, and I can do an oil change that way. If, let's say, I don't have tools or I don't have the time to raise up the car, go underneath, you know, loosen the oil pan screw and all that stuff. If it's like an emergency situation, like a bug out situation, I need to quickly get that dirty oil out, I could stick this tube through the dipstick and the dipstick outlet, and I could pump out with the siphon pump. I can pump out the dirty oil and get it out of the engine, you know, without having to jack it up and do all that kind of stuff, which takes a lot more time and more tools and things like that. So a siphon pump is very, very important, okay? Especially if you plan to bug out with a vehicle, you should have one of these in your bug out vehicle. So this way you could easily scavenge fuel from different sources. So, and there's many other things you could do with a siphon pump. I mean, you could use it to collect water. You could use it to collect rainwater, for example. You could stick one of these tubes here into like a shallow puddle. You know, if you have like a really shallow puddle and it's too shallow to stick your canteen in and soak up the water into your canteen, you could stick this little tube into that shallow puddle and you could pump the water out of that little puddle into your canteen. You know, now obviously you're going to want to clean these tubes or get a separate pair of tubes for pumping water and for pumping fuel, because once you pump gasoline or oil through this, you're not going to be able to use this to pump water, you know. So you could even get a separate one for water and a separate one for fuel, okay? Same thing with heating oil, okay? You may need to pump out heating oil, and you can actually run a diesel vehicle on heating oil, you know. It's not the best thing for your diesel, but you can actually do it. So if you're in a post-SHTF situation, you come across an oil tank from someone's house, you could pump out a little bit of oil from their oil tank and use that to run your diesel vehicle. And that's obviously just for an emergency, but there's a million things you can do with a siphon pump. I can spend 30 minutes just talking about it, but those are the main things, is, you know, being able to scavenge fuel from different sources, you know, gasoline, diesel fuel, heating oil, kerosene, okay? Being able to pump water and scavenge water from puddles and different sources, okay? So those are two big reasons to buy one of these siphon pumps, and they're cheap enough where you can buy several of them. And what I actually have is I have one for pumping water, and then I have one for fuel, okay? And I always keep one in my car. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. Take care. God bless. And don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.